What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Dokkan video. So with Jiren coming out, I wanted to go ahead and take this opportunity to show you guys a team build guide for the Tournament of Power category, because alongside Jiren, we actually do get a lot of new Kale and Kefla, and of course the Kefla Awakening and Kabba's Awakening as well. So just a lot of new units. Android 18 comes in as well. A lot of new units do drop, and they are all a part of this category, and we're going to go over that. So I'm going to go over the best options, a few really good key replacements, and aside from that, I'm going to show you guys pretty much the free-to-play version of this exact team that I will go ahead and build today. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure you do consider subscribing for more content and sharing the video out with your friend if you have a friend that plays Dokkan. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, I actually can't really show this too much in the Dokkan Team Builder because they have not updated and added all these new units in it yet. So to begin, Jiren, Universe Survival Saga category leader, offers 2 key and 120% in all stats right now. Now, we know he's going to awaken probably sooner than later. He'll also change to being a 3 key, 150% leader, alongside offering 3 key and 50% to the STR types. Right now it's 2 key and 40%. Also, immense damage and greatly lowers defense with the power impact. Passive skill, very, very generic to be honest. Attack defense plus 120%. Generic but really good. Medium chance to stun all enemies. Has really relatively crappy links aside from shocking speed. Infighter is usable. Cold Judgment, I guess. Godly Power is a pretty good link, but it's not super usable on his category team. It is usable though with one character in particular, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Now, on the surface of this, right, when it comes down to this ragtag group of units that are available to this category, it's very easy to look at it and do exactly what I did and be like, oh yeah, this team's going to suck really badly because of the fact that, let me come over here, this is an easier view, because of the fact that they just don't have good key synergy. Like, the key isn't very good. So you look at all these units, we come down here, and that's a very valid point, but there is a big difference in that they actually have access across the board through Tournament of Power as a key link. So that is actually a 3 key link across the board that they all share with each other, so you really don't have that issue. So get that out of your mind. Don't think that they're going to suck. So to begin, we have Jiren as our leader, okay? So, again, they're going to start off with 2 key via leader skill, but it really doesn't matter when you factor in Tournament of Power, making up the slack, and of course, when he awakens, that will change. Also, UI Goku right here in physical technically has this leader skill as well, but it's just kind of like the baby version of the leader skill. He'd be a very good sub-leader, for example, in Battlefield 2.0. You know, if you wanted to run this category, you can. He could be a very good sub-leader. Anyways, moving on. Our first inclusion after Jiren is actually the new Kefla unit. This unit actually picks up a lot of traction. She gets a lot better post-awakening. So post-awakening, she keeps the exact same super attack. I believe it was 3-turn defense raise for 30% supreme damage. She gets 90% as opposed to the 70s she had before. High chance of evading enemies' attacks. So one of the best dodging units in the game, and there's no restriction on her like UI Goku or anything like that. High chance of evading, and that includes super attacks. Or she gets a medium chance of evading enemy super attack and countering with tremendous power. What this means is that she can dodge a super attack and not counter it, by the way. Which, I mean, if she dodges it, then I guess it doesn't really matter. You know, the freaking counter is you know, what's the word? Icing, right? It's icing on the cake. So that's just makes it better, but you don't necessarily have to get it. I have seen my Kefla do this, not this version, but the previous version, dodge the super attack and not actually counter it. Now, speaking of her counters, they actually changed her counter mechanic, and she got a lot better at countering. Now, if we come over to the counter-attacking units, these are all of the units in the game that can actually perform a counter attack. So you look at them, there's normal super attacks versus, these are countermeasures, not the same. This is a little different. This is where something triggers for these units after they get hit, I believe. Anyways, super attacks versus normal attacks. So evade and counters super attacks only, counters normals only, or block and counter because these guys have that mitigation passive. But nonetheless, they have the ability to do that. So they actually changed Kefla on her awakening from having the ability to counter with enormous power, which I think only this unit and the SS2 Vegeta AGL have enormous power as a modifier. Maybe the unawakened version of these guys. Yeah, they have it too. Okay. So that's the weaker mechanic, right? But it changes to being tremendous, which is the strongest version of the counter. If we take a look at the most recent addition to the counter units list, this guy has the ability, if we scroll all the way down to counter hits, all right, counter with tremendous power. So yeah, she actually picks up the ability to do that. So what that means is that her counter hits are going to be hitting really hard. 90% and the ability to do that. This is really, really good because what makes this unit so good is she actually picks up something even AGL Super Vegito doesn't have. She has the ability to counter, but also gets an attack increase on the passive. This unit, I think she's underrated. Like, she is literally towing the line, if not already past the line, of being a better unit than AGL Super Vegito, who actually ruled this game for a very long time. The only thing he has on her is he's a better tank. Like, she literally is able to do everything else. Now, aside from that, I mean, of course, he counters normal hits, so he's going to get a lot more counter hits. But just saying counter versus counter, she is towing that line where it's like, okay, she's getting an attack boost, and she can counter with tremendous power as well. Again, he's a better counter unit, better tank, a better unit overall. So I just kind of realized that he also counters normal hits, so, you know, slow your roll. But nonetheless, very well-balanced unit, awesome unit, definitely deserves an inclusion on the team. And she got a lot better post-awakening. Now, the next inclusion on the team is the other rebirth, or one of the other few rebirths, Kale. So this is Berserk Kale. So what happens with Berserk Kale is actually probably even a bigger change than what happens with Kefla. Previously, Berserk Kale actually lowered her own defense. I don't know if it's stacked to where, like, if she launched multiple supers, I assume that it would. So it made her the ultimate high-risk, high-reward unit to where it's like, oh, she can potentially launch up to 3 super attacks via her passive and the potential system, but you lose 30% per super attack she does. It said 30%. It didn't say it didn't stack, so I don't know. But if it was just 30%, then, of course, it's a lot easier to stomach that than, you know, the potential 90%. First and foremost, leader skill. Awesome sub-leader or leader for Battlefield. I'm going to put that out there because now that Battlefield's a thing again, you got to pay attention to some of these units' leader skills. By the way, 120% up, immense damage. One of the only units on the team that has immense damage. Actually, not really, now that I think about it. But still, immense damage is on her. She actually, I believe, had that as an SSR anyway, which I could be mistaken. Anyways, launches an additional attack with a great chance to become a super attack. So she's guaranteed a second attack that could be normal, but has a 70% or so chance of it being a super. And with additional attacks in the potential system invested, she can, again, rattle off a third attack. And you can have a scenario where Kale just turns into a monster, you know, and launches 3 super attacks that are all critical hits, depending on your level of investment. She's too good. She's too good not to use, especially because she no longer gets a defense down mechanic. And a lot of these Broly-type units, Kale and Broly, a lot of them just lose defense. For example, look, defense minus 30% for 1 turn. So since she no longer has that type of a restriction holding her back to where it's like, oh, you're going to definitely want to use her. But I will say one minor nitpick is I still don't give her the Super Saiyan link. She should definitely have it regardless of her being Berserk. She should definitely have it because she's clearly a Super Saiyan. So it doesn't really matter. But either way, I mean, they don't even call her Super Saiyan. They just call her Berserk Kale. So yeah, that's 3 units in the team. The 2 new rebirths, 2 of the new rebirths alongside Jiren. Also, the next inclusion in the team is the fusion, Kefla, or Kefla, whichever you prefer. Now, honestly, she didn't make my initial final version of this team. In this slot, I actually had SS2 Kale, the controlled Kale. Not because she's better, but because I just feel like while Kefla's rebirth is actually phenomenal, and she's a really freaking good unit, jack of all trades unit, I just feel like the things that she does don't warrant running her, in my mind. But nonetheless, I did go ahead and add her back onto the team. But she was the only unit I was unsure of. And to reiterate, let me show you. Immense damage, awesome. Greatly lowers defense, even better. Hero units typically don't get this type of mechanic, although they have gotten a lot more lately. She's self-sufficient for her own orbs now. She always was, but she's self-sufficient. This changed to increase by 2% more, which actually is very, very important. That's a very big deal. 2% is a very massive deal. And also, they remove the restriction of needing physical orbs. So she generates her own orbs, but she doesn't necessarily need to use those orbs, that physical orb. She can use whatever she wants. She can use rainbows, another orb path, so you can technically save those physical orbs for another unit like LR Trunks, for example, on a mono physical team if you want that. Medium chance to evade enemies' attacks, including a super attack. So here's where she gets into being both of the previous two units. Kefla has a high chance, to evade enemies' attacks. And then Kefla also has a medium chance to evade enemies' attacks that are super attacks and counter them. She doesn't do that. So innately, she's not as good at being that type of unit as Kefla is, which I don't mind. I don't mind this. It's just to my point. Launches an additional attack. This is where she becomes Kale, which has a high chance to become a super. She has a 50% chance for her additional to be a super, while Kale had a 70, which is a great chance. So I just felt like with having both of these units already on this team, filling those roles, you can have Kefla, but she's not doing anything better than them, basically, right? All of them are very, very similar units. And I feel like just because of that, you didn't really need Kefla in particular. But nonetheless, I gave her the slot in the end because she still is a phenomenal unit. Still can be a very good tank on the onset. Still can be a very hard-hitting unit on the onset and can still generate her own orbs and warrants it. But it's just, to me, if that makes sense, it's just like those two units kind of can dodge better and multiple hit better. And then also I kind of looked at it like, how do I want to support Jiren better as the leader of this team? But nonetheless, those are 4 inclusions in the team. And to reiterate on supporting Jiren, Kale actually would have done that, SS2 Kale, as a support type unit. She actually offers a support passive, key and attack and defense, I believe. So would have been awesome to have her. And I have it on the side, actually. Kale is a 30% attack and defense support. So that's awesome. But then I also kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what? With this next inclusion, this is what made taking Kale off the team and putting Kefla on the team possible. Topo. So Topo has Hero of Justice, for example, with Jiren, which is a 25% attack link. And he also is able to supply Jiren with 30% attack and defense, while also having this as an option, the attack boosted by 25%, which is a thing. I really don't really like that mechanic. It's very misleading because the way that it scales, but it is what it is. Extreme type enemies also lose defense. I don't know how much defense reduction actually helps, so I just kind of avoid that. But either way, he's able to supply Jiren with 30% here, 25% there. They also have 2 key links together. I don't believe that none of these even matter anymore. So Topo is a very good unit, especially on this team when you have 2 Jirens floating around. So yeah, that's what made it possible. And the original, well, not really original, but you know what I mean. The OG, we're bringing in UI Goku. Awesome unit. Definitely needs his awakening though, but nonetheless, still one of the best units in this category to where it warranted him being on the team. I would have ran a unit like, to kind of go back to the list, I would have actually included Frieza. Didn't want the ally debuff. I didn't want him debuffing the allies. I just felt like it was unnecessary for a unit to be on the team that did that. But he can be subbed in for a unit or 2 in certain situations. Because everybody on this team is a super type unit, so he would have been the only villain, and he would have been debuffing all of them all the time. Hit can be a solid stun type unit, but stun is a mechanic that they don't really have in the game a whole lot anymore. Bergamo, a nice tank. He is what he is. And then I didn't really like the Kefla. She's to me. She wasn't really worth it, especially because she shares a name with the other Kefla. They're both Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. So yeah, Super Saiyan 2 Kefla does become farmable via this unit right here. And then on top of that, the final unit that I really wanted to include, aside from the SS2 Kale, which I already talked about and why she wasn't in there, was this Kaba. This Kaba is actually freaking phenomenal, to be honest. Like, I would argue he deserves a spot on this team over somebody like Kale because they kind of fill the same role. I would argue that if you don't have a good Kale, he deserves a spot because he's able to get up to a 49% chance on this team. If you don't make any changes and it's all alternative power units, he gets 49% crit chance. I would probably give him level 11. What is it? Does it have to be 14 and 12 if you prioritize combo? I don't know, additionals. But 11 and 15 if you can. Or excuse me, 15 and 11 combo. It's a crit chance. You can give him dodge as well if you want to, because, I mean, he doesn't have any sort of defensive viability. He literally fills the same role as Kale. Just, in my mind, if Kale has any orbs, she's just far and away better. But On top of that, being a tech type unit, if you wanted to give him level 20 crits for whatever reason, you could do that, and he'd roll off 2 chances at getting a critical hit per attack. He'd have basically a 50% chance right here via his passive, and then a 40% chance from the potential system at a crit level 20. They don't stack together, but they roll separately, so you're almost guaranteed to get it because they're both pretty high numbers, all things considered. So I feel like he deserved a spot on the team. And for all the same reasons I kind of went through all those units, to kind of reiterate and make this a bit easier for you guys, saying that you either pulled Jiren or didn't pull Jiren, and you don't have any of the other units on the team, you're using the completely free-to-play option, aside from Jiren if you have him as a unit, but if you don't, you can definitely take him as a friend. Your lead will be Ultra Instinct Goku. You will also, from there, unless, of course, you know, like I said, you have Jiren. For whatever reason, you start a new account. So Ultra Instinct will be your leader. Jiren will be your friend, or Jiren if you have a Jiren. On top of that, you will take the Kaba that I looked at just a moment ago, the Tech Kaba Awakening. He is the awakening of this Kaba. You would also go after the SS2 Kale and Kefla units. So these two right here. This is SS2 Kale. This is SS2 Kefla. That was Jiren. On top of that, you'd still want physical UI Goku on the team because he's actually phenomenal. This is one of the better free-to-play units in the game. And finally, you'd want Golden Frieza in that last slot. STR Golden Frieza. That's the way I kind of broke it down. There are a few other, like, cutesy combinations you could have had. The Android 18 is actually not a part of this category now that I look at it. Man, I have so much phlegm. But she has the link, but she's not a part of the category, apparently, or they haven't updated this. But I was going to say that she's like basically best friends with the 17 if you wanted to do that. You've kind of just got to mix and match where you see fit. Another really good option would have been STR Ultimate Gohan as well. So I'm just here trying to give you guys, you know, options and such. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, of course, as far as the team is concerned. And yeah, have an awesome day. I'll catch you all in the next one. And actually, before I go, another really good option for this team is actually STR Kaba because he actually has this category. And that supports Jiren by a lot, actually. So running Topo and Kaba on the team really makes Jiren really good. Very good. Anyways, take it easy, guys, and peace out.